Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Katie Snow, and welcome to our Gut Reset Coaching Call number 2. So glad you guys have joined us. We are recording this, so you'll have your copy that'll be sent, and you can watch it over and over again. So what we're going to do today is, go over how to reintroduce foods after we finish the 30 days so that we do it in an efficient way, and we're not going to reintroduce foods in a fashion that's going to stop all of our progress that we've made on the 30-day gut reset program. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to save some time at the end for some questions that were sent in. We'll go over those, answer those. So glad you've joined us. This is a really good call, really good information. We'll go ahead and get started. So why reintroduce food? So after the 30 days, so I know some of you are a little ways into it, a little more than halfway into it. So after the 30 days, so this is at the end, your gut lining is going to be at a healing point for most people. And some of you, a little bit more work to do. So maybe you're not quite there. Again, this program can be extended to 60 days if you have a little bit more of a challenge, maybe had a little bit more gut issues to deal with and overcome. So, but most people at the 30-day mark, the gut lining has healed, the inflammation has calmed down. I mean, you can just feel it. Your belly is a lot less swollen and bloated because of this. And many of the symptoms that you had at the beginning may have subsided by this point. So the effects of inflammatory food will be clearer when you reintroduce them one at a time. So a lot of people can see as they're doing the introduction that we're going to teach you, it is going to be very apparent some of these foods that were problematic before we started this program. And so doing it in this way is just, you're going to see a dead marker on this one food that you bring back in. And then again, you might not want to reintroduce certain foods. If you just know dairy has always been a problem, you don't have to reintroduce that food. So we're just going to teach you how to reintroduce the foods that you do want to reintroduce into your diet after the 30 days. So the effects of inflammatory food will be clear when you reintroduce them one at a time, where you know what you're reintroducing and have resources to mitigate the symptoms. So what we've learned in this program and what you've learned so far, what we've taught you, you'll know what to do when you do have a symptom that comes about from the reintroduction of food. So number one, finding out the effects of common inflammatory foods on your body. It provides valuable information. So some are worse than others. Some are fine in small doses. Some are fine with less stress. Or say you're on vacation. We've had many patients in our practice that, because they have that constant stress, maybe with their job or family, having to deal with maybe lots of kids and just having a high stress load. But when they go on vacation and that stress is lessened, they actually can deal with a food that maybe was problematic. So we see that people, when they have that high amount of cortisol, they're constantly pumping out, how that has an effect on the gut lining. But when we don't have that constant cortisol being pumped out, you can just see where the body, the gut lining can adapt and it can deal with these foods. But some are still off limits. You know what your reactions are, you know what your symptoms are when you do have those foods. And then some were problematic but become fine after healing the gut. And so we've seen that when we've done food sensitivity panels with some of our patients in the office. We've seen that maybe they were allergic to carrots, which seems crazy because carrots are healthy, but for whatever reason, maybe they had a little damage and they were eating carrots on a regular basis. And so the body, tagged it as an invader. And so when they have carrots now, they have a little bit of a reaction. And so now that we've worked on the gut and got it back to, ground zero, then reintroducing carrots, which may have been problematic before. We want to reintroduce anything that we know for sure is a gut irritant one at a time, but also anything that's a healthy food that maybe you were having a problem with on an individual basis that is on the okay list. You want to reintroduce that one at a time as well. But the goal is to enjoy the most nutritious and gut flora nourishing diverse diet. So That's what our goal is. We want to let you be able to bring these foods back on, test them one at a time, but we want to add all these, good, yummy foods back to our diet, but do it where we know that our body is okay and our gut is okay with it. So do you need to reintroduce? So reintroduction can bring back symptoms or trigger flares. So if you're enjoying the subsided symptoms and don't feel like you're ready for a food reintroduction, you totally don't have to, or you can put it off, say, another 30 days. I know so many people that we've talked to on this gut reset program, they are just loving the high amount of energy that they've been having. And so, how can we keep this energy, or, how can I keep my skin feel so much smoother? How can I keep that? And so we just tell them, you don't have to reintroduce, these foods in. And for some people, it's like, just don't bring grains back in. And once you've went through this 30 days and you see, hey, I survived, I can do it, I feel so much better. It's easier at that point to say, I'm just not bringing grains back into my diet. And these days, there are so many resources at the grocery store, even things that are pre-made. I was in the grocery store this morning, and sometimes I'll just take a little time and just see what's new, and so I can share with people. But I was actually at Walmart, which I don't normally go to, but I was, had to pick up some other crazy stuff like some bungee cords. And so I went to Walmart, and so I just cruised through their freezer, like healthy section, and I was amazed at how many grainless items, like keto items that were in their freezer, paleo items. But anytime you see keto or paleo, that's going to be a grain-free, or it should be a grain-free item. Always check the ingredient list, of course. But it's just amazing how many things are available that weren't there 2 years ago or 5 years ago. And so we're able to share that with people, with our patient base, because, we're all in a hurry. We all have, time budgets, and we want to be able to have healthy foods, but don't spend half a day in the kitchen, or when you get home from work, you're 2 hours in the kitchen. So if there's something healthy, we want to find out about it and bring it to you and share it with you. But again, I was walking through and just looking, and I'm like, wow, just some great options. So you have a minute, once a month or once every other month, go through the freezer section and look for some items that, again, have time so you can read the list of ingredients. But there's so many things that are available now. So when you're reintroducing foods, you can have things that are a convenience food, so you don't have to spend all this time in the kitchen. And you can also bring back other foods on the no list that are less likely to be as problematic. So here are the 6 most inflammatory foods to reintroduce. So the ones that we typically use in our office are the dairy, corn, soy, and wheat. But this is a little bit fuller list because a lot of people have problems with eggs, and then the tomatoes and the other nightshades. So the nightshades would be like eggplant, peppers, white potatoes, any kind of tomato product. And so we do see this, of course, these are gut irritants, but we see this in a lot of our patients. So just be mindful of these when you're reintroducing, if you decide to reintroduce these particular foods, because these are the most inflammatory foods. So you may want, we'll look at the schedule in a minute, an example schedule, but you may want to start with a couple other foods reintroducing that aren't on this high inflammation foods list, just to kind of see how your body responds to these foods. And then, maybe you can ease one of these more inflammatory foods in every so often. So maybe, the first week, you may want to start with, something that isn't on this list. And maybe the next week, the second week of, being off a 30-day program and reintroducing, you can pick one of these from the list. But we'll talk about how in a second to look at that in a scheduled month. So how to reintroduce. So number 1, keep the rest of your diet the same as you had it during the gut reset program. So don't make changes except for, we're going to just be doing one at a time. So everything else you were doing, just keep doing it the same. Number 2, start from a small amount of the reintroduced food, and gradually we're going to increase the dose over a week so that we can watch for these delayed reactions. So if you do have a problem with that food, it may not be in the first 30 minutes of you introducing it at a very low, mild dose. But when you get to, 3 and 4 days into that week of that new food, you may start seeing some of those very slight symptoms. And so we're doing this in a way that's not going to just slam your body with histamine and irritate your gut right back. Because if we can kind of see it coming, we can just immediately go back to what we were doing, pull that food out and just know, hey, that's a problematic food. We want to try different forms. So example for eggs, we can try them raw and then cooked, fermented, which I know sounds funny, but some of these are different ways to prepare eggs. Egg yolk only and then egg white only. And so that way we can see some people have an egg white issue. So it may not be the whole egg. And some people may have a yolk issue. It may not be, the full part, all the parts of the egg. So it's important that we try different things to see, if the body can respond and we can pick up on it. Number 4, make sure it's only one food that you're reintroducing at a time. So example, only wheat, not doing wheat and eggs. So, don't drive through a drive-through and get, a breakfast sandwich in the morning and you got, the whole dairy, bread. So you have like the wheat that you're introducing and then egg, and then your body is just like, what's going on? I would think that would put you in a little bit of a tailspin, going from a nice, gut that's been flourishing and it's healed and it's feeling really good. And then you put that into your system. You may have quite a bit of symptoms you would deal with after that. Number 5, write down what you ate and any symptoms that you experience in your daily food journal. So you might have gotten to a point where you kind of are good with this food journaling and you may just want to have a notebook, and that's fine instead of printing these sheets. I know for some people, they carry a calendar around. And so you might just want to write in the corner of your calendar, like egg, or 2 eggs. I'll show you in a minute what I'm talking about. But as you're introducing more, you might say like, a little bit of brain fog or, maybe a little bit of anxiety. And so that way we can kind of see what's going on as you're eating or introducing the amounts of this one food. And then number 6, if you experience any negative symptoms, stop the reintroduction and go back to the gut reset diet until the symptoms subside. So if you're on like day 2 of eggs and you can just sort of feel, some of those symptoms, and we'll talk about a list of symptoms in a minute, just stop and go right back to what you were doing. It would be easier for us to get back where we were than to just dive straight in and then just have a total flare up and you're miserable. So if we can pretty quick find out, hey, feeling a little, some funny symptoms, we can go right back to what we were doing. And then number 7, reintroduce the next food on the list. So we'll just skip, say if we got to day 2 of eggs and we could feel a problem, stop it. And then you'll have the rest of the week to kind of recoup on what you were doing with the gut reset program. And then the next week you can start a different food. You just need a few days, to be able to get back, get your body kind of balanced out again, and then we'll start with the reintroduction of the next food. So here's a sample schedule. And again, you guys will have this video to watch over and over again. However, we did put this PowerPoint, an expanded, larger PowerPoint, and another full expanded video of how to reintroduce foods. It is going to be on your membership site. And that way, again, you can watch it, the more complex video over and over again to make sure that you understood everything correctly before you get to the 30-day point. And these videos, I know they weren't there ahead of time because we didn't want to give you this information at the beginning and just be overwhelming. And so if you haven't gotten it yet, it should be dropped into your membership site in the next couple of days so that you have that. But please reach out if you do not see that video so I can help you find it. So this is a sample schedule of just a week. I'm sorry, of 6 weeks. of reintroducing some of these higher inflammatory foods. Again, you can stretch this out over 10 or 12 weeks and introduce some other foods that were on the no list that weren't these top 6 inflammatory foods. So again, this is just a sample and you can totally drag it out more. And again, it's a sample because if you know eggs are a problem and you're not going to reintroduce them, you can just take that week 1 completely out and start at the first food that you know you want to reintroduce. So again, this is just a sample. This is not what you have to do. Want to make sure I'm emphasizing that. So with this sample schedule, you'll see week 1. So over the left column, there's the week 1 and then each day of the week, how you should incrementally increase. So the first day of week 1, you'll do 1 egg yolk. And then the next day, you'll do 1 egg white. So again, that way we can differentiate if it's the egg yolk or the egg white that's giving you a problem. Although there are delayed reactions. So you could see a response to an egg white on Tuesday or Wednesday. So again, we're just gonna have to, work on this until we figure it out by starting back over. If you do have a problem with eggs and you start back over, you might want to do the opposite order where you start with an egg white and then an egg yolk. And then if you want to do a little bit slower, you could do egg yolks for a few days by themselves. And then same thing with egg whites, you can do those by themselves. So sometimes you got to just dial way back down so that for sure it's one or the other. So it just helps you pinpoint more exact. But moving on from the week 1, you'll go from Tuesday to Wednesday, you'll add 1 more egg. And then with Thursday, you'll add another egg. So you're at 3 whole eggs. And you'll continue the week if you're not having any problems with 3 whole eggs per day. And that's just 1 serving. That's not like you need to do that at each meal. That's just the serving for the day. The next week, if you look down at week 2, where we're introducing dairy. And so you'll start the first day. And we did allow ghee on the program, so it's clarified there weren't any of the dairy proteins, or should not have been any dairy proteins on a higher quality ghee. So when you get to this week, you're really introducing those dairy proteins. And so 1 tablespoon of butter, you'll do that. And then the very next day, you can do 2 tablespoons of butter or 2 tablespoons of heavy cream. And then the next day, a half a cup of milk or heavy cream. And so you're going up in, if you look at the order, butter to heavy cream, it's much more saturated with dairy proteins. And so you're trying to elicit a response if your body's going to have one to this. And so then you go up from a half a cup of milk to 1 cup of milk. And then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of that week, it's 3 cups of milk or yogurt. And then if you go to the next week, we're going to introduce tomatoes. Again, you can do these in any order that you want. You can do a week of introducing and then a week of just doing the gut reset program like you were doing with that food that you added. So you kind of have like another barrier week. And then you can go to week 3 and then do the second food you want to reintroduce. So go as slow as you want to, but I would advise that versus speeding it up, doing any faster than what we've recommended with this sample schedule. And then we can just finish going over and looking at some of these other weeks. Week 4, we introduced corn. So just starting with a tablespoon of boiled corn, and then the next day, a half of a cup of boiled corn. And then on the Tuesday of that week, a cup of boiled corn 3 times a day. So just increasing that amount. And then you're going to finish the week with a cup of boiled corn 3 times per day. And so week 5, the edamame, so that's soy. We're reintroducing soy here. And again, if you're a male, males really shouldn't be putting soy in their diet. It's not a good idea ever. And so this would be fine for, say, a woman maybe like in her 40s and beyond, because they can deal with the basically what soy does is it mimics estrogen, the effects of estrogen. So a woman who is, 40s and 50s and 60s, she can handle that. But kids, adolescent men, they really shouldn't introduce that into their diet, unless their healthcare professionals told them otherwise. But if we're introducing soy, we would start with 2 pods of edamame. So you can find those in the freezer section. Every once in a while, you can find them fresh, but most of the time you'll find them in the freezer. And so you'll cook just 2 pods, or you can introduce starting 1 tablespoon of soy milk. Just make sure that it's unsweetened and unflavored, because they have vanilla sweetened and vanilla plain and all these different versions. Just get a completely plain soy milk if you are reintroducing soy in. And then the next day you'll do a half of a cup of the edamame pods, or a half of a cup, or in this case, and a half of a cup soy milk. And then the next day, a cup of soy milk, next day, 3 cups. And then you'll finish the week having 3 cups. And a cup would be 8 ounces, 6 to 8 ounces would be a cup serving. And then that last week, again, I don't advise introducing wheat back in. That's probably just the worst thing to reintroduce. If you're going to pass on anything and not reintroduce, I would say grains, but at least wheat. There are other grains that your body can deal with a little bit better. But I would say on the wheat flour, if you were, say, going to introduce grains but not wheat, you could start with a rice flour. And so then you would use the same amount. So like the 1 teaspoon of wheat flour, if you're going to reintroduce, say, rice at this point, instead of, say like gluten-free grains, you could do 1 teaspoon of rice flour. And then the next day you could do a half of a cup of rice pasta. And then, the next day, a cup of rice pasta. And that way you can see how your body's doing with that grain. And if you're going to keep, say, a gluten-free diet and you're just wanting to see how your body deals with it, I would go that route versus introducing the wheat. Okay. And then, so now we want to go over symptoms to watch out for. So some of you guys already knew, the symptoms, and that was what brought you into doing the gut reset program. But some of you guys maybe didn't realize some of these symptoms were attributes of, your gut being irritated. So just watch out for these symptoms. Brain fog, I would say, is probably up there at the top, along with fatigue and malaise. Of course, gut symptoms. Some people have that as a response right off, and sometimes it's a delayed response. But any kind of like gut irritation feeling, and sometimes just bloating. They'll see just an instant bloat on a certain food they reintroduce. Respiratory symptoms, so mucus, we see that a lot with these higher inflammatory foods that we talked about, just because they are, mucus producing foods. They're high histamine, high stress foods. And so you'll see a little like post-nasal drip or mucus and other respiratory symptoms of mucus. And then you'll see skin breakout. So, at the 30-day point, you can feel your skin. It just feels so much smoother. But what we'll see as people are introducing some of these more stressful foods, they'll just feel like it's not quite as smooth, or even an acne or, a skin breakout. Pain. So some people already had like joint pain, muscle pain, or headaches before. They could see an onset with that. Changes in appetite, anxiety, nervousness, or mood changes. So if you had, say, like anxiety or like a social anxiety, and you were doing fine with it at the 30-day mark, and then you're reintroducing, and you notice when you go to an event, that kind of nervousness pops back up, that could really just be that food that you're introducing, and it's causing a little bit of a gut irritation. So these can happen within a few hours to days after consuming the food. And it doesn't have to be, right afterwards. And so that food journaling is so important, because that's where we get to be a detective and figure out what food is causing this problem. But there is a full list of symptoms. Again, these are, just 7 of the top ones that we see. But if you look at your weekly food journal, I know you guys have had that and printed out, but you'll see a full list of symptoms in the weekly food journal. And then make sure you're recording both the symptoms and their severity, because as you're going through the week, if you're adding that one food, you may see, oh, it's like a 1 anxiety. And then you get to like the 4th day, if you haven't stopped already, and your anxiety is at like a 7 or 8. And so that scale will kind of help you measure where you are. And if, you can determine whether you should stop that food. So if you experience food reactions, stop eating the food immediately. Let your body recover until the symptoms subside before bringing back the next food item. So I was telling you guys, give it a few days. You'll know in the first 3 or 4 days if you're having some of those symptoms. So if you stop it, you'll have the rest of the week, another 3 or 4 days for you to let your body just kind of balance back out before you start the next food reintroduction. And then some other helpful tips to manage symptoms. If you're just, had just an all out like panic attack, if, anxiety was kind of creeping in and then you felt that, you just got to like put the fire out on your gut. And so 2 things that have been very helpful for our patients. We have a product called Turmeric Power. It's in a powder form, so it works really fast. And it's basically, putting the fire out on the gut, and it does work really fast. So you just mix it in water and drink it. And then another idea is activated charcoal. So you can find this at most stores these days. I've seen it at drugstores because if a child has, consumed something they shouldn't have, poison control, a lot of times we'll tell people grab some activated charcoal capsules and open them up, get them in their system so that it can neutralize whatever that was. And so we can do the same thing with, we put a food in our body and our body didn't respond positively, that activated charcoal will go in and it just knows. And so it grabs, the different proteins and basically neutralizes. And so it'll pass through your system and you might see a little bit of black in your stool. That's okay. Don't be alarmed. That's the charcoal. But of course you wouldn't want to see that for days. It should just be in one bowel movement. But those 2 can be very helpful, and lots of water to follow up to let your body neutralize the attack that it was having. So we just want to say thank you guys for joining us on the Gut Reset program. We know that you've learned a tremendous amount of material and information, and will continue to learn how different foods affect you. And keep journaling, keep listening to your body. And if you would like to make the Gut Reset a part of your quarterly or annual regimen, we tell people, it's a great idea to do this, just like you do spring cleaning, pull things out of your closet, haven't wore this shirt in a year, put it in a pile. It's a great time and a trigger. If you do something once a year, say like a cleanup in your house, just couple that with doing the Gut Reset program, because just like you need to clean your gut out, just like you clean your closets out, it's great to have a trigger. Sometimes it's January for people, beginning of the year, I want to do some cleanup. Maybe I blew it on the holidays from Thanksgiving over to Christmas and the New Year's. And so the beginning of the year sometimes is a trigger for people to do a program that does a little cleanup of maybe some indulgences that they had in their foods. But spring cleaning is what we tell people, just because they kind of get past all the things they have to do in January. It's like getting taxes ready and, lots of things that are going on in January event wise. And so sometimes, February, March is a good time, and you can put on your calendar and do it every year. We do want to hear everybody's testimonies when they do wrap up their 30 days. And again, we have some people that go 60 days. And that is fantastic. Whenever you're ready, we want to, hear your testimonies. And the main thing is testimonies are so helpful to other people. There's people out there that have dealt with just the same thing you've dealt with, whether it's, anxiety for a long amount of time, or, your body was just inflamed, headaches, constant headaches, and they don't know, that this program could help them. And so sharing your testimony really does help other people. And so we'd love to have your testimony. And so what we want to do just to help motivate you to share that testimony, so I know it's hard to get on a video camera and share your testimony. But we are going to give everyone a free bottle of Gut Restore. So this was a part of the Gut Reset program. This was the probiotic that you took once a day, but we want to give you a free bottle for your video testimonial. So it's a $50 bottle of probiotics. And so I know y'all would love to have that, and I'll send it free of charge, ship it to your house. Because this is a product that is great to continue on. It's always good to be on a high quality probiotic all the time. And so all you need to do is do at least a 1-minute video, and you can record it. I think it's always good to have a family member, they have the camera, and so they're going to keep it nice and still. And then if you can do it, your camera sideways like this, it helps. But if you just do a quick 1-minute video, and it doesn't have to be lengthy, it doesn't have to be perfect. But if you send that to help@drericksnow.com, I'll get it. And as soon as I get it, I'll send you a bottle of Gut Restore in the mail. I did have a few questions that I wanted to answer. And these were questions that were presented for me to cover during the second coaching call. So I'll go ahead and get on those real quick. Number one, what is the best thing to do if a food that I reintroduce causes an issue? And so we did cover this in this call, but just to make sure that, reiterate, you want to stop that food immediately. So the second that you sense something's off and you're having even a small amount of symptoms, just stop it immediately and go back to the gut reset diet, what you were doing. And then I would recommend having a bottle of the Gut Restore on hand, because this is so soothing for the gut. And so if we stop that food and give your body, just you're checking all these other foods out that you already had taken out, and then take some of the Gut Restore, you'll just feel a soothing. And you can, again, do the turmeric product that we have, Turmeric Power. It's on our website. And that's, a product that I use in so many other things. So if you haven't checked out our food videos that we use the turmeric in, there's a ton of videos. And so some really fun, easy recipes on our YouTube channel. Just go to Dr. Eric Snow YouTube channel and you can see some recipes for the Turmeric Power. But I definitely would, stop that food immediately, going back to this question, and stop the food immediately and then get some Gut Restore on board. Number two, had someone ask coffee. What's the best way to reintroduce coffee? Because you've missed it, and that's okay. I totally understand that. I love coffee too. What I would advise is let the coffee, if that's something you're, really wanting to get back to quick, is use that as your first week to reintroduce. And so you'll start with just a small amount of coffee. And so it may be a tablespoon of coffee. So just brew you the smallest cup and then drink a tablespoon out of it. And then the next day you can go to like a quarter of a cup, and then the next day a half of a cup. And if you're doing well, then you can go the next day to your full cup, and then you're good to go. But just watch and listen to your body, how it's doing, because again, coffee could have been part of the culprit from the beginning. Again, you can do a half calf, which we recommend. You can get that at, your local coffee place. Just ask for half calf. And so it just means it's half caffeinated. Or if you just love coffee and you don't necessarily need the buzz off the coffee, you can do decaf. And so again, those are just lesser amounts of caffeine, because caffeine, again, is the gut irritant in there. So just introducing it very slow. And then again, you can introduce it slow with a coffee that has less caffeine in it. And then again, if you just want to do just be really strict and do 1 cup of coffee a day. The rest of the day, you can do green tea, herbal tea, if you just, like having a warm drink. And again, the Turmeric Power that we were just talking about, I have a delicious golden milk recipe on our YouTube channel. Check it out. And so that's what I do. I have my 1 cup of coffee in the morning. If I do more, I get jittery, don't like how I feel. But that 1 cup of coffee is what I need. And the rest of the day, if I want something warm, I'll either do warm green tea, or I'll do a golden milk, which is basically, the milk of your choice that your body agrees with. And then just 2 scoops of the Turmeric Power, and you blend it, and it's delicious. So definitely have to try it. And then question 3, how can I keep this amazing energy going that I've had since starting the Gut Reset program? And I totally know what you mean. You love how just refreshed and that energy, and that's because you've taken so many stressors off of your gut. And so your body is able just to function and have that extra reserve of energy. And so what I would say is just really keep those 6 inflammatory foods that we talked about a minute ago, just keeping those at a very minimal. If you can do grain free, I would say that's the ticket to really cutting out a lot of stress and static in the body by taking the grains out or just having them as treats every once in a while. So if you go to, say, a party, a baby shower, a wedding, and you see, okay, they have wheat, I'm going to have it, but you just have it and then you're done. But you don't like buy it in your regular groceries and have it in your pantry where you're making things with that one very stressful food. So that's my recommendation. It works for me. If we had potato chips in the house, we eat potato chips. If we had, cookies made with wheat in the house, we would eat them. And so if you just have them when you're at an event and you don't buy them and put them in your regular groceries, then you won't eat them. And so that's kind of our rule of thumb, and it works pretty good. And then last question, what other foods are problematic besides the 6 inflammatory foods that we talked about in this video earlier on? So I have to say grains, which we just talked about, but any of the grains. So grains, if you go back to the science behind the Gut Reset program video and watch it again, grains have, different gut irritants as just a part of the plant protecting itself. And so it has phytates. And if we're not properly preparing the foods, ahead of time correctly, we're going to have those gut irritants in our gut. And so I would say any of the grains, those are going to be problematic for people. Even if, you got your gut in tip top shape and you're just humming along at reintroducing these foods. At some point when you're adding multiple grains in, it's inevitable that you're going to cause some gut irritation with that. So my recommendation is just to not reintroduce very many grains back into your food groceries. And then caffeine, because caffeine, if you're drinking 3, 4, 5 cups of coffee a day and then green tea on top of that and then chocolate, and you're getting this caffeine into your system, eventually you may end up back where you were with your gut just being a little irritated or a lot irritated. And then I would say chocolate. So chocolate is one of those, probably number 7 on the list of inflammatory foods. I would say chocolate would be up there. We have a lot of people, a lot of patients that come in and we're sitting here trying to figure which foods to pull out and then reintroducing them. And a lot of times we see chocolate show up on the list as problematic. So that is our extra questions. Again, we are here for you. We want to support you. If you have a question and we did not cover it in this video, make sure that you email us. It's help@drericksnow.com. And I'm happy to provide a response. Just give me 24 hours. But we're here for you. And even if you didn't get to start this Gut Reset program at a certain point and it was a little bit later, that email address is always there. I'm always on the other end of it. So if it's a little bit later, I'm happy to answer your questions. So just make sure that you email me. But I'm so glad that you were here today and we're able to share in this video and learn some other good things. Again, we're here to support you. We want you to be successful. We want you to have some great testimonials to share with your friends and family of how this has improved your life. It's improved, just your well-being every day. So really glad that you were able to do this program. So that's it for now. I'm Dr. Katie Snow, helping you to transform your health naturally.